Breaking news now. Peace in Ukraine was doubted and mocked after Trump's promise. Former President Trump's views on the Russia-Ukraine war paint an increasingly stark contrast with GOP leaders in Congress as he solidifies his frontrunner status in the Republican 2024 presidential primary race. On Wednesday, he pledged to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours of taking office and refused to say which side he wants to win the war. "When I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours, Trump said in a CNN town hall Wednesday night, adding he would meet with both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. "The war will be over in 24 hours because they both have weaknesses and strengths." Experts doubt Trump can follow through on his promise, but his criticism of the United States' leading role in supporting Ukraine could muddy the otherwise unanimous response on Capitol Hill. National security expert and University of New Haven professor Jeffrey Traestman said that Trump provided zero evidence of how he would stop the war. "There's nothing to substantiate that claim, and the probability and likelihood of being able to stop the war within 24 hours is very slim to none." He then stated, "That's the truth." On Wednesday, Trump reiterated his desire for everybody to stop dying, but again refrained from taking a position on whether Russia or Ukraine should prevail in the conflict. "I don't think in terms of winning or losing," he declared. "I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people." Trump's comments on Ukraine have been heavily criticized. Some of the former president's Republican opponents and more visible detractors immediately criticized his remarks. Republican presidential candidate in 2024 and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson called Trump's stance weak and not winning the war. According to a tweet by Hutchinson, Trump reminded everyone tonight of his support of Russia and his willingness to sell out Ukraine. And former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, referred to Trump as Putin's puppet. "I think he would try to do it by turning Ukraine over to Putin and Russia, as ridiculous as that sounds," Christie tweeted. "The only person, I think, who would really be celebrating from last night would be Vladimir Putin," said Senator Mitt Romney, Utah, a vocal Trump critic. "I find it shocking that when asked who should win, Russia or Ukraine, he didn't say Ukraine," as Romney pointed out. Reduced GOP efforts to initiate peace talks. A former senior U.S. diplomat in Eastern Europe, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said that while a coalition of far-right Republicans have supported the idea of pushing for negotiations with Russia, that position appears to be declining within the party. "The quasi-isolationists are weaker today than they were 2 months ago," said the ex-diplomat, pointing to a letter signed by just 19 GOP lawmakers urging President Biden to pursue peace talks. Since numerous Republican lawmakers have previously opposed legislation concerning Ukraine, the letter was a very dumb thing for them to issue, because it underscored their weakness. A former diplomat who now works for a think tank has described an interview Florida Governor Ron DeSantis gave to Fox News host Tucker Carlson in March, in which he referred to the conflict in Ukraine as a territorial dispute, as the high watermark for Ukraine skeptics. DeSantis received immediate backlash and later apologized for his remarks. Carlson's departure from Fox News removes a prominent voice condemning American policy toward Ukraine. U.S. pressure toward peace talks is largely seen as helping Putin, as any successful negotiation in the near future would mean ceding Ukrainian territory to Russia. Putin illegally annexed 4 Ukrainian territories last year in the east and south of the country, which his forces continue to occupy. The Biden administration has been steadfast in supporting Ukraine's goal of retaking its territory and letting Kyiv decide when the time is right for negotiations. However, the U.S. has been ambiguous about Ukraine's desire to retake the Crimean Peninsula, which Putin illegally annexed in 2014, likely leaving some wiggle room for an eventual peace deal. McCarthy and McConnell support Ukraine. Most Republicans have long supported sending weapons to Ukraine and currently see no end in sight to the conflict. The current support for Ukraine has been vigorously defended in recent days by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, RKLF, and Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell, RKY. McConnell said this week, "I do think that we have enough support within Congress to sustain this for a good deal longer. All of my party's top officials in the House and Senate support our efforts to win this war against Russia." McCarthy addressed Trump's remarks at a press conference on Thursday, saying that Republicans in the House have been very clear about the atrocities that Russia and Putin have presented to this world. "I think we have been very clear in our votes as well," he added. To paraphrase, "I think we lead with exactly what we've been doing." The potential threat to the U.S.-Ukraine partnership was downplayed by Zelensky on Thursday. He told the BBC, "Who knows where we'll be in the next election in 2024. At that point, I think we'll have won." Weakening support among Americans. Nonetheless, Trump is taking comfort in the widening chasm in public opinion over his administration's policy of providing military aid to Ukraine in a conflict with no clear resolution. The percentage of Republicans who believe the United States should concentrate on domestic issues rather than those occurring in other countries rose to 71% this year from 65% in a survey conducted by the Pew Research Center and published this week. The percentage of Americans who hold this view has increased by 4% since last year, and now stands at 55%. Trump has said that the war in Ukraine would never have begun under his watch, but during his presidency, he was criticized for his positive comments toward Putin, whom he called savvy and a genius, after Russia invaded Ukraine. Even though an arrest warrant for Putin was issued by the International Criminal Court in March, the former president still refused on Wednesday to label the Russian leader a war criminal. University of New Haven professor Robert Traestman argued that Trump had emboldened Putin in his efforts in Ukraine by threatening to withdraw from NATO. He acknowledged that people have legitimate concerns about the war's longevity but emphasized that even low-intensity conflicts can drag on for a long time. However, he argued that, from a geostrategic standpoint, this was not necessarily a bad development. "This is a chance to undermine a tyrannical regime," the president said. But the former U.S. diplomat thinks Trump's rhetoric wouldn't really change American policy unless he actually became president. The former diplomat also pointed out that in regards to Russia and Ukraine, Trump's words didn't always match his actions. Despite Obama's opposition, Trump ended up sending Javelin missiles to Ukraine and expelling dozens of Russian diplomats suspected of being spies. The former diplomat remarked, "It's worth pointing out that when Trump was president, he said many things that were naive, but the overall policy of his administration overall was not bad."